All right.
Hi.
Well, Beth, yeah. So we're on the second segment now, and this time we're going to talk a little bit about um, what happens with parents and their children who are making plans for the fall that have been disrupted, and possibly uh, they may not be officially quarantined to the house, but college-wise they might be quarantined in sense of maybe school's not going to be in person-to-person classes. Maybe they're going to be going to a different kind of school. What are some considerations for that?
Well, I'm big on the end result. The
Yeah.
goal is always to have somebody who's going to be independent, considerate, be able to be empathic, get along with people. And so by saying that, I think the rules of the house have to be discussed. Now, if everybody's in high school,
Yeah.
and this is the first child off, there's a different rule than if this is the last person off.
Yeah.
Or if you have young children at home, there's some things that you have to consider. That being said, we're still looking at consideration rather than control and curfew.
Okay.
So unless there's a legal reason, I think we would want to be thinking about that.
So again, you're taking the long view of things, but I would think that the living situation is going to be different. Some parents are going to say goodbye to their kid in September, and some are they're going to be going to a community college. They're going to beauty school. Maybe they're going to auto mechanics training. Some are going to go and get a job. Maybe they want to take a year off, right? How do we keep the long view in shape there when we have a young adult living with us and we want them to think about consideration, but we have a 4-year-old that we do at some level have to control?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we have to spend some time with ourselves. We really have to be self-aware, recognizing what's going on in us. It gets very frustrating. It's a real rude awakening when you go to a college campus, even if it's just local, and you realize that you're not one of them anymore. But we know we're not, because we sleep differently, we eat differently, we have different situations and habits that we go through. But we have to know that our kids are still going to do the things that young adults do. They're going to stay up late, they're going to sleep late. And so I'm going to try maybe not to make quite as much noise when I'm making the coffee if I can help it. And you're going to try not to make as much noise coming in. If either of us are going to change our plans drastically, we're going to let the other one know.
Yeah.
And we have to help our other kids know that they're not the big kid right now. They'll get this privilege when they're older.
And some of our kids have already missed prom.
Oh, yeah.
And they've missed graduation.
Yeah.
They've maybe even missed having yearbooks signed. I mean, there's a whole kind of the way high school ends has changed. At university, summer schools are completely online, and they're planning for the fall to be online, maybe. So even the plans to go away are going to cause a problem. What's the best way to handle our students' anxiety, and what might we see if they were anxious, if they don't come to us and say, I'm anxious, and how do we handle our own and maybe that of our spouse as well?
Okay. A graduating senior just said to me the other day, she goes, the opportunity is past to wrap it up and be all together. That's what I'm going to miss. The championships I'm going to miss. But even if everybody had done everything, I always call this summer no man's land. You're not a high schooler and you're not a college student.
Okay.
Everything is like, what's your identity? I mean, you're kind of in no man's land, and it's okay. We've got to go through that. It's like a desert of time, and you try all different kinds of crazy things. But when you can tell when things really are not going well for your child, no matter what the age, if they're not sleeping enough or too much, if they're not eating, if they end up like their hygiene changes, and I'm not talking they have a bad day, they've been working out, and you think, whoa. I'm talking about there's something about that lack of self-care, and when that starts happening, you want to say, are you okay? Or I've noticed this.
Okay.
Sometimes it spills into their rooms, into their other things, but you really want to be just paying attention and asking the question or saying, I'm concerned. If you can't get this together, we need to work on it.
Yeah. So you're staying in touch and you're monitoring the situation but you're not sort of hovering over the
Right.
situation. Yeah.
The same way you would with a friend. I mean, I've said that to a friend before. Boy, you haven't been yourself for a week. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's very hard for kids to get it from their parents because we're always been their parents. But adults do that for each other. You know, parents do it for their children,
Yeah.
but we do take care of each other, and it's important to do that.
Now you're in a private practice. You counsel kids and parents and families and all that sort of
Right.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What have you noticed are some of the things that people are experiencing that are kind of new now that they're quarantined or the virus has hit or fear has come into our homes? What kinds of things are you noticing there?
Well, what I do notice is that there's a lot of denial and there's a lot of trying to rationalize what's going on. So either it's a conspiracy or it's the end of the world. The germs are everywhere, the germs are nowhere. And we know that there's a mix of all that being true.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I find is they're desperate for a minute alone. I'm on the radio sometimes on WSBY every Monday, and somebody said, would you please talk about how you can find 5 minutes alone when you can't leave the house? So there's that. But the other thing people are saying is, you know, it's so nice to be able to be together without having to rush to a dozen different places.
Right.
So what we're noticing is that everything feels new, and when everything feels new, people get anxious. That either means that sometimes they start smoking or drinking.
Okay.
You know, they overdo something. You know, a glass of wine, yes. You know, a bottle or two a night, no.
Right.
You know, so you want to monitor those things. And then, you know, when you can't sleep or when your speech gets real pressured or real irritable, we're noticing a lot of that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. So it's sort of like normal life, but more.
Yes.
And people are getting heightened emotions because they've never had to deal with this kind of a thing before.
Exactly. And, you know, I remember when I took the pathology class, when it says, you know, like what's going wrong for people, I would say to the professor, I do this. And she goes, everybody does that. It's to what degree you do it and how much it impacts your life.
Okay.
So a little bit of a messy room and you clean it up, okay, it's fine. But if it's hoarding, not fine. It's the degree.
Yeah. Is there an advantage to having, you know, I know a lot of families who are separated are having Zoom dinners with one another or Zoom birthday parties. Is there an advantage, even when we're all in the same house, to having regular meetings as the family to talk about how things are going or to plan what to do for the next week? Is that helpful, or is that sort of passé?
Well, I don't think it's passé at all. I think we don't do it very often because our brains are wired to do things the way that have worked for us, you know.
Okay.
But I do think it's really good, and especially as things change. Obviously, depending on different ages and the roles in the family, there are going to be some things that are non-negotiable. You know, for like little kids, yes, you're going to go to your Zoom class, you're going to do your homework, and you're going to go to bed, and all these things. But how do we want to spend our free time? Yeah. Or, you know, with the older kids, you know, hey, we're going to have a meal. Who wants to cook what? You know, we can all get some buy-in. Or what does this week look like? Or yes, you need to see your friends. How can you do it appropriately and safely and not bring other things back to us?
Yeah. So we're back to the consideration business again and the cooperation thing that you've always talked about. So in a sense, you kind of, at this point, you're not able to forbid an 18, 19, 20-year-old from getting in the car and visiting their girlfriend or visiting a friend. But they have to have some awareness of what impact is that going to have on our family when you come back home. And what are we going to do about that? So there's always this, I mean, the impression I'm getting from you is there's this ongoing dialogue that has to happen in families, and hopefully it's been happening probably all along.
Ideally, it's been happening all along, but a lot of times it doesn't. I mean, you know, I always say, you know, it's my house. I feel like I'm kind of the queen. We just do it this way, and they've grown up that's what they expect and what they're used to. Yeah. But as things change, it is never too late to start a really good communication pattern. You know, understanding that our children are individuals from us, that they have different likes and tastes, and they're part of our family, and we want to include them, but we can't just hang on to them. We have to let them be.
I was talking to the gal that cuts my hair. Well,
Mhm.
when my hair used to be cut a long time ago.
Yeah, right.
But, and she said when she went to beauty school, she said, I had to be there 40 hours a week. You clock in, you clock out. She said, and if you don't do that, you don't get a good grade. The guys that I talked to that fixed my car, they said it was exactly the same. They said it was harder to go to those schools than it was to go to high school because of how rigid it was, and they were on us all the time.
Mhm.
So I would think then those kids are going to come back home and want to let off some steam, which probably not always is going to be positive steam. How can we put ourselves in their shoes? How do we understand that but not tolerate it being abusive to everybody else?
Again, I think we have to remember where they are in life, and that letting off steam is great. And talking as a family, or as you're driving around, or like, you don't have to have these big formal things, but what are healthy ways to let off steam? Exercise, fun, games. Not super fast driving. Not dangerous
Right.
things.
Right.
When that starts happening, you want to again speak up. Hey, there's something else you could do that'd be more fun. What's out there? And there's a million great things. Now I can't think of a lot because I'm not one of those like exercise people. But hey, I mean I exercise a little bit. But but there's things we can do. We want to let them know that that's what they really should do. And if it starts impinging on the family, let's talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And I do want to make a quick comment, though, about when they leave, if they go, like, say, over to their girlfriends, or they want to see a couple friends, and it's within normally safe range, that's fine. But we have to remember the other family members, if they have a compromising condition. We never, we got to think, okay, yeah, but, grandma lives with us and she has asthma. So let's think about that.
Yeah. I suppose, too, I was talking to a gentleman today, and he said that he has learned over his lifetime to consult his own feelings before he decides to interact with everybody if something's upsetting him. And he said sometimes what they're doing is annoying me has something to do with me, myself. So he said, or it reminds me of something that I didn't like from another part of my life. And he found that sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but he's thinking of what's going on with me first, and then he's ready to interact with his kids in a better way.
Wow. I have to say, I'm very impressed. It's a very hard skill to learn and implement regularly. But yes, we do have to know that our reactions to anything is really telling other people about us. So if we get upset, if we're happy, if what comes out of my mouth tells you about me, doesn't tell you about you.
Yeah.
So it's really important that I start listening before I start speaking, to know what it is.
Yeah.
The other thing is, sometimes if we didn't get to do something as a child and we wanted to, we want to make sure our kids get it, even if our kids don't want it.
Right.
And if we got to do it and we loved it, we want to make sure that they have that same happy experience, even if they don't want it. Yeah. So again, I think I love what your friend says. Yeah, we have to pay attention to what's going on with us.
And one of my friends said once, she said, she was a single mom. She said, I did everything I could to give my daughter everything I didn't have, even if she didn't know that it was my last penny. And she said, now that my daughter is moving out with her boyfriend before they go to college, she said, I'm worried that I'm going to have to pick up the rent. I'm worried that I'm going to have to pay some bills. I'm worried about this. And she said, I know that's not the right way to think about it, but I really don't want her to experience all the stress that I remember being under. What's going on there?
Well, and you know what I really admire about the mom is that she recognizes that she's been under stress, and she recognizes that there should be a limit. Right now, I don't want to pick up the rent or whatever.
Yeah.
But here's what I think of the strength that the mom has in having learned those lessons and done all those things. And that's what she doesn't want to deny her child. The ability to come up against something hard and figure it out. Now, if she needed rent, I guess she could always come home and live for free, right? Or pay a small rent.
Yeah.
But to keep subsidizing something that someone else can't afford does them no favors. It doesn't teach them to problem solve. It doesn't allow them to feel independent, control their situation. It keeps them babies. And then if something happens to us, they're really out on a limb.
Yeah. And then we're answerable to whoever they marry. because they think, nice job. Now I'm doing all this, right?
Right.
Yeah. Gee, this is just great talking to you about all this stuff. It's taking me back many years. And where were you when I needed you, right?
I was learning this stuff some other way.
Yeah. But, was it your father that said, you never stop being concerned. You never stop worrying. Worry can be useless. It can also be useful. It can show our concern as long as we don't try to control. Huh?
Right. Yeah. Well, and as long as we don't live in the land of worry,
That's right.
If you're concerned about somebody and you stay involved with them and you care about them, that's good.
Yeah.
But, we can't fix it for other people.
Yeah. I heard a doctor say the other day, he said, my job every day is to spread calm. And he said, when people look at me, I can be upset, but he said, I want them to be calm so that they can do the best job they can do. And he said, I'm not denying their feelings, but he said, I want them to know that we're all going to get through not only this, but probably school and everything else.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. It's great talking to you about this. It's very, very helpful. And, I wonder if, even though we're talking about college, these are probably good practices to deal with like everything in our life, buying a new home, moving to a new city, being fired, getting a new job. You're really talking about universal principles here, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's great talking to you. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, I'll put up a slide in a second.
Okay.
But my email is Beth Plachetka, LCSW @safeharboril.com. And if you want a list of the high points of what we talked about today, or the points, be glad to send that to you.
Oh, that's great.
And then my number, 630-466-8657, is forwarded to my cell phone. I'm always glad to talk to people, make an appointment. And we have podcasts and other resources on safeharboril.com.
And then you're also on the radio, you said, every week?
I am. I'm on WSPY Monday mornings, 8:55, 5 minutes. Your life matters.
Okay. And what's the, what station do I dial?
WSPY is 107.1.
Okay, great. Thank you.